wearing the diamond necklace I'd given her 3 months earlier. She smiled. Then she looked past me. "Emily," she said, "you made it." I froze. At the end of the driveway stood the woman I had been secretly dating every Wednesday for 6 months. Emily was holding a pumpkin pie. She looked at Claire, then at me, and smiled. Not an angry smile, not a nervous smile. A smile that made my stomach drop. "Happy Thanksgiving, Alfonso." I couldn't speak, because there are moments when a man realizes his life has just changed, and there are moments when he realizes it changed months ago, and he was simply the last person to find out. This was the second kind. I had spent 12 years learning how to make women feel loved. That was the polite way of saying it. The truth was uglier. I knew exactly what lonely women wanted. Attention, flowers, a phone call at the right time, someone who remembered their birthday, someone who listened when their children didn't, someone who could sit beside them at a restaurant and make them feel like the most important woman in the room. I gave them all of that, and they gave me things in return. Dinner, vacations, clothes, cars, money. I never considered myself a thief. A thief takes something without permission. I convinced people to give it to me willingly. That was how I justified it. Until Claire. Claire Montgomery was 62, a widow, a former CEO, and, according to every financial magazine that had ever written about her, worth more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. She didn't need a man. That was why I wanted her. At least, that's what I told myself. When we met at a charity auction, Claire barely noticed me. That should have been my first warning. Most women noticed me. Claire didn't. She was talking to an old friend when I approached. "Do you mind if I join you?" She looked at me. "You're Alfonso, aren't you?" I smiled. "You've heard of me?" "No." I laughed. "Then how do you know my name?" She pointed at my name tag. I laughed again. She didn't. Then, after a few seconds, she smiled. That was when I knew I wanted her. Claire wasn't impressed by charm, so I gave her attention. I remembered little things: her favorite coffee, the name of her late husband's dog, the anniversary of her mother's death, the book she'd mentioned once and assumed I'd forgotten. I didn't forget. I never forgot what people cared about. It was one of the reasons I was good at what I did. Within 4 months, Claire trusted me. Within 6 months, she gave me a key to her house. Within 9 months, she started talking about the future. That's when I made my mistake. I believed I had won. Then I met Emily. Emily Carter was 43, divorced, successful, beautiful. She owned 3 fitness studios and lived in a house she had bought with her own money. She didn't need a man either. I should have walked away. Instead, I saw a challenge. Wednesday evenings became our evenings. Claire never knew. At least, that's what I thought. I created rules. Claire was weekends. Emily was Wednesdays. Different restaurants, different clothes, different colognes, different stories. I was careful, very careful. I had survived much worse than 2 women. Then, 3 days before Thanksgiving, Claire called. "I want you here Thursday." Of course. I want everyone important to me at the table. There was something strange about her voice. Everyone? A pause. Yes, everyone. I should have asked who. Instead, I assumed she meant family. The following night, Emily texted me. "I'm going to Thanksgiving at a friend's house." I asked where. She didn't answer for nearly 10 minutes. Then, "Claire Montgomery's." I stared at the message. I read it again, and again. Then I typed, "What did you just say?" No response. I called, straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. For the first time in years, I felt something I rarely experienced: fear. I drove to Claire's house the next morning. She wasn't home. Her housekeeper let me in. I told her I had forgotten my watch. It was a lie. Of course it was. I went upstairs, into Claire's study. I wasn't looking for evidence. That's what I told myself. But I was. On her desk was a photograph. Claire and Emily, sitting together at a restaurant, 6 months earlier. The exact month I had started seeing Emily. I picked up the photograph. On the back was a handwritten date, and beneath it, "Haha, he doesn't know." My hands went cold. Then I noticed something else. A second photograph, Emily alone, looking directly at the camera. On the back, "She knows now." I heard the front door open downstairs. I put everything back. A few seconds later, Claire walked into the study. She looked at me, then at the desk, then back at me. You're early. I smiled. Couldn't stay away. She smiled too. But something in her eyes had changed. Neither could Emily. My smile disappeared. Claire walked past me. She didn't accuse me. She didn't ask questions. She simply said, "See you Thursday." Then she left the room. I stood there alone. For the first time, I understood something terrifying. Claire wasn't discovering my secret. She had known it. The question wasn't whether she knew. The question was, why had she invited Emily to Thanksgiving? I almost didn't go. That would have been the smart decision. But men like me rarely make smart decisions when money, pride, and women are involved. I arrived at 6. Claire opened the door. She kissed my cheek. "Happy Thanksgiving." "Happy Thanksgiving." Then she whispered, "Try to enjoy dinner." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" She smiled. "You'll see." Inside, Emily was standing near the fireplace. She didn't look at me. That frightened me more than if she'd slapped me. There were 7 people at the table. Claire, Emily, me, Nathan, Claire's nephew, Grace, her sister, Daniel, the family attorney, and an empty chair. I noticed it immediately. "Who's that for?" Claire looked at the chair. "Someone who isn't coming." I laughed nervously. "Sounds mysterious." "It is." Dinner began. For the first 10 minutes, nobody mentioned anything unusual. Turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, wine, normal conversation. Then Nathan looked at me. "So, Alfonso, what exactly do you do?" "Private investments." "What kind?" "Technology." "Which companies?" I smiled. "Several." "Name 3. My smile disappeared for half a second. Then I gave him 3 names. 2 were real. 1 was not. Nathan nodded. "Interesting." "What?" "I've never heard of that company. It's private." Nathan smiled. "So private that it doesn't exist?" Silence. Grace coughed. Claire looked down. Emily stared at her plate. I laughed. Everyone laughed with me, but my palms were sweating. Then Grace asked, "How did you and Claire meet?" I answered immediately. "At an art auction." Claire looked up. "No." My heart stopped. She smiled. "We met at a charity gala." I stared at her. "You remember differently." "No." She took a sip of wine. "I remember correctly." Nathan looked at me. Emily looked at me, and suddenly I understood. Claire wasn't trying to embarrass me. She was showing everyone how easily I lied. One small lie at a time. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone looked toward the hallway. Claire stood. "I'll get it." She opened the door. A woman stood outside. Older, maybe 70. She held a small envelope. Claire looked at her, then at me. "This is Margaret." I had never seen her before. Margaret looked directly at me. "You're Alfonso?" "Yes." She nodded. "I thought you were younger." My stomach tightened. Claire took the envelope. "Thank you." Margaret turned to leave, then stopped. She looked at me again. "You look exactly like him." I frowned. "Like who?" But she was already walking away. Claire closed the door. I stared at her. "Who was that?" Claire didn't answer. "Claire." She turned around. "She knew my husband." I relaxed slightly. "Okay." "She knew him before I did." I nodded. "So." Claire looked at me. "She also knew the woman he was seeing." My blood ran cold. Nobody spoke. Then Claire returned to the table. Dinner continued, but I couldn't taste anything. After dessert, Emily finally approached me. "Can we talk?" We went into the hallway. I grabbed her arm. "What's happening?" She pulled away. "Don't touch me." "What did Claire tell you?" "Nothing." "Then why are you here?" "Because I wanted to see you." "You've known Claire for 6 months." Emily looked at me. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I found out about you." I stared at her. "When?" 6 months ago. Before you met me." She shook her head. "No." My heart sank. "Then when?" "The 2nd week after we started dating." I stepped back. "You knew?" "Yes." "And you stayed?" "Yes." "Why?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I didn't believe Claire. I didn't understand." Emily whispered. "I thought she was lying about you." I stared at her. "Then what changed?" "You did." "What did I do?" "You told me something." "What?" Emily looked toward the dining room. "You told me you had never cheated on anyone." I said nothing. She continued. "You looked me straight in the eyes and said it." I swallowed. I had to know if anything you said was real. Then she walked away. I followed. Emily, she stopped. I loved you. She closed her eyes. That's the problem. Then she left me standing in the hallway. I returned to the dining room. Claire was waiting. Daniel had the empty chair beside him. He opened a folder. I looked at Claire. What is this? She didn't answer. Daniel placed the first photograph on the table. Me leaving Emily's apartment. Second photograph. Me buying Claire a necklace. Third. Me at a hotel. Fourth. A bank statement. Fifth. A message. Sixth. Another woman. I looked at Claire. How long? Almost a year. I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. You followed me. No. Then how did you get these? Claire looked toward Emily. Ask her. I turned. Emily was crying. I didn't take them. Then who did? She looked at Claire. Claire said, I did. I stood. You investigated me. Yes. You hired someone. Yes. You knew everything. Almost. Why didn't you throw me out? Claire's eyes filled with tears. Because I wanted to know whether there was anything underneath the man you were pretending to be. I laughed bitterly. And she didn't answer. That silence hurt. Then Daniel placed one final document on the table. This is the important one. I looked down. It was a bank statement. My name. Claire's account. A transfer. $250,000. I stared. What is this? Claire said quietly. I was going to give you that money. Emily looked at her. Claire. Claire raised her hand. I was going to give it to him because I believed he might actually love me. I couldn't speak. But then, Claire continued, I discovered something. What? She looked directly at me. You weren't cheating because you needed money. I frowned. You were cheating because you needed to be wanted. The words hit harder than an accusation. She continued. You don't chase wealthy women because you're greedy, Alfonso. I looked at her. You chase women who can never leave you. I couldn't breathe. Because if someone needs you financially, you never have to find out whether they would choose you without the money. Nobody spoke. Claire's voice broke. That is what I finally understood. I looked at Emily. She was crying. I turned back to Claire. So what now? Claire looked at the envelope on the table. The money is yours. I stared. What? You can take it. Emily looked shocked. Nathan stood. Aunt Claire, no. Claire didn't look at him. I want him to have a choice. She pushed the document toward me. Take the money. I looked at the amount. $250,000. Enough to erase almost every financial problem I'd created. Enough to start over. Enough to disappear. I picked up the pen. Everyone watched. I could hear my heartbeat. I signed the first line. Claire closed her eyes. Then I stopped. I tore the document in half. Then again. Then again. The pieces fell onto the table. Nobody spoke. Claire looked at me. Why? I answered honestly. Because if I take it, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering whether you bought my honesty. Claire stared at me. For the first time that night, she looked surprised. But then she said something I wasn't prepared for. That's not the reason I offered it. I frowned. Then why? She looked toward the empty chair. Because that money was never mine. Nobody moved. Claire walked toward the empty chair. She placed her hand on its back. Then she looked at me. My husband left this money for someone. Who? She didn't answer. Daniel did. His daughter. I frowned. Claire had a daughter? Claire closed her eyes. I had a daughter. Had. The word changed the room. Emily looked down. Nathan stepped toward Claire. Aunt Claire. She shook her head. No, he deserves to know. She looked at me. My husband had another child. I stared at her. A daughter. She was 23 when she died. The room went silent. I'm sorry. Claire nodded. She died because she trusted someone who told her he loved her. I didn't move, Claire continued. He took her money. My stomach tightened. He convinced her to sell her apartment. I looked at the table. He promised they were going to start a life together. Claire's voice cracked. He disappeared 2 days before their wedding. Nobody spoke. I found her 3 days later. She stopped, then looked directly at me. And when I saw you for the first time, she took a breath. I thought maybe I was making the same mistake again. I finally understood. This wasn't only about me. It never had been. Claire hadn't been trying to catch a gold digger. She had been trying to make sure she hadn't fallen in love with the same kind of man twice. I looked at Emily. You knew? Emily nodded. She told me. When? Before I met you. I stared at her. So that's why you stayed? Yes. You wanted to test me. Emily shook her head. No. Then why? She looked at me. Because I wanted to be wrong about you. That hurt more than anything Claire had said. I sat down. For the first time that evening, I wasn't thinking about money. I wasn't thinking about escaping. I wasn't even thinking about Claire. I was thinking about Emily. She had known. She had stayed. And every Wednesday when I thought I was manipulating her, she had been hoping I would prove her wrong. I whispered, "Why didn't you just leave?" She answered, "Because I loved the man you were when you forgot to perform." I looked at her. What man? She smiled through her tears. The man who brought soup when I was sick. I remembered. The first month. She'd had the flu. I drove across town at midnight. I brought soup, medicine, tea. I hadn't asked for anything. I hadn't expected anything. I had simply wanted her to feel better. Emily continued. The man who stayed on the phone with me when my father died. I remembered that too. I thought that was you. She paused. Maybe it was. Then she walked away. I wanted to follow her, but I didn't. Because for once, I understood that loving someone sometimes meant allowing them to walk away from you. I left Claire's house that night with nothing. No money, no gift, no promise, no Emily, just the truth. And the truth was expensive. Over the next 6 months, I rebuilt my life. Not dramatically. Not beautifully. I found a real job. I sold the car, the watches, the expensive clothes. I moved into a small apartment. I paid my debts. I stopped calling women when I needed something. I learned how to sit alone. That was harder than I expected. One evening, almost 7 months after Thanksgiving, someone knocked on my door. It was Claire. She stood there holding a small box. What are you doing here? I wanted to return something. She handed me the box. Inside was the watch I'd given her, the expensive one. I don't want it, she said. You should keep it. No. Why? She looked at me. Because I finally understand what it means. I frowned. It means you wanted me to remember the time. She smiled sadly. I wanted you to remember that time can be wasted. I looked at her. Are you okay? Yes. Really? She nodded. I've been learning. What? That being betrayed doesn't give you permission to betray someone back. I stared at her. She continued. I thought exposing you would make me feel better. Did it? No. What did? She smiled. Watching you walk away from the money. I looked down. I almost took it. But you didn't. I wanted to. I know. She turned to leave. Claire. She stopped. Why did you really invite Emily to Thanksgiving? She was silent for a long time. Then she said, because Emily asked me to. I froze. What? Claire turned around. She came to me first. My heart stopped. Why? She found out about you. I stared at her. She wasn't trying to expose you. Then what was she trying to do? Claire smiled. She wanted to know whether you were capable of telling the truth when there was nothing left to gain. I couldn't speak. Did she ask about me? Yes. What did she say? Claire looked at me. She said she still loved you. My chest tightened. Where is she? Claire smiled. Somewhere you should have gone months ago. She handed me an envelope. I opened it. Inside was a single address and one sentence. If you come as yourself. I stared at the words for a long time. Then I drove. Emily opened the door. She looked different. Or maybe I did. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at the envelope in my hand. You came. I almost didn't. Why? Because I was afraid. She smiled. Of what? I answered honestly. That you wouldn't want me anymore. Emily looked at me for a long time. Then she stepped aside. Come in. I didn't move. Emily? Yes? I don't have money. She laughed softly. I know. I don't have a nice car. I know. I don't have anything to offer you. She looked directly into my eyes. That isn't true. What do I have? She smiled. Now? She opened the door wider. Yourself. I walked inside. And for the first time in my life, I didn't enter a woman's home wondering what I could get. I entered wondering whether I could finally become someone worth keeping. I never married Claire. I never received her fortune. I never got the life I once believed I deserved. But Claire taught me something no amount of money could have taught me. And Emily taught me something even more painful. A woman can forgive your lies. She can forgive your greed. She can even forgive the man you used to be. But she cannot build a future with a man who is still pretending. Years later, people sometimes ask me what happened at Thanksgiving. They expect a story about a wealthy widow catching a gold digger. They expect betrayal, money, revenge. They expect me to say Claire ruined my life. She didn't. She ended the life I had been pretending to live. And if I had to choose the moment that changed everything, it wasn't when Claire showed everyone the photographs. It wasn't when Emily admitted she knew. It wasn't even when I walked away from $250,000. It was the moment Claire looked at me across that Thanksgiving table and said, "You don't chase women because you love money, Alfonso." She paused. "You chase women who can afford to leave you." For years, I thought that sentence was an insult. Now I know it was a diagnosis. Because the truth is, I wasn't afraid of being poor. I was afraid of being loved without having anything to offer. And the woman who finally proved me wrong was the woman I almost lost because I spent my entire life trying to prove I was worth loving, trying to prove I was worth loving, trying to prove I was worth loving.